Welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I am going to share with you how to create this dark, abstract, mottled background that I did. I've used it on some background for some flowers and stuff, and it's kind of nice. It's not uniformly dark, and it is super easy to do, and you can customize it. So let's get into it. Creating the texture. Use the shader of your choice and burn circular motion onto the board. Don't burn in straight lines because you will end up with noticeable lines running through the texture. Instead, change directions frequently as you burn. Work in little sections or patches at a time. Leave little gaps here and there that are very pale in color. Create small areas of darker color. Basically, incorporate a little tonal variety into the texture. I am using the flat of the shader as I work. This means the pen is angled so the front half of it is in contact with the board. I do not have the entire length of the metal on the pen tip in contact with the board. The reason I don't is because that would create a larger and softer pattern on the texture than I want. I created a darker version of the texture on the second half of this space I'm burning in. This is a simple matter of increasing the heat setting on my burner. With this type of texture, I don't do much reburning. The rare occasion when I do reburn is just to break up pale streaks or add a small dark spot to the texture. Altering the texture. Let's examine how the texture changes depending on the size of the shader being used. I am starting with my smallest shader, Colwood's Mini J shader. This shader produces a small, delicate texture. Next up is the slightly larger J shader. It produces a texture with random patches that are a touch larger than the Mini J. I am using the flat of the shader with all of the different shaders that I demo in this chapter. The D shader I would classify as a medium-sized shader. Using the flat of this shader produces a larger and softer texture. When compared to the textures created by the J shaders, it looks like it's out of focus. The LE shader is one I bought and never use. It is a medium-sized shader that has a sharp point. With the way that I hold the shader, it produces a texture similar to the Mini J. The SHS shader is another medium-sized shader, and one that I seldom use. This shader produces a large, soft texture. The last shader I will demo is the E shader. It is a large shader that produces a very soft texture that reminds me of velvet. Using the texture. I like to begin by burning a dark border around the objects before I burn in the background. This creates a buffer zone. I work slow and keep the pen tip in optimal position so that the edges of the objects are crisp and clean. After the buffer zone has been created, then I start on the background. I want the background to be dark, but not black. I have my burner set to produce a light to medium brown burn result. This ensures I have some tonal variety in the background. I am using the flat of the shader to burn circular motion. Since the buffer zone is in place, I don't have to burn right up to the edges of the flowers. This allows me to work faster. Other than adding the buffer zone, everything else remains the same from the original Creating the Texture chapter. You're burning circular motion in a meandering direction. Avoid burning in straight lines. and use the flat of the shader to get larger and softer texture. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I will add this to my background playlist. If you're not familiar with that, I have a number of videos that cover what I think are good background textures. And I also have one that discusses how to create that little paper card that I used, and you can add that to your card collection. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.